and welcome back to the NWA 1983 project. I'm your host, Lex G, and with me, as always, is Matt Riley. How you doing tonight, Matt?
Still damn hot.
You should invest in an air conditioner, buddy.
I do, but it's in the bedroom.
Oh.
So that way I sleep nice and comfy. And unfortunately, it's actually cooler right now, but if I open the windows, bugs will get in.
Yeah.
And my cat's lazy as shit. She'll just be like, meow. I'm like, come on, kill him. Meow. I'm like, yeah.
I also just have AC in my bedroom. Once got a quote for essential air from my house, and it was $15,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have a second AC, but it's upstairs, and if I end up renting out my room upstairs, which I'm probably going to do, I like to leave that for the person who's up there.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm a swell guy. It's muggy and hot, but the alternative is, I'm saving the earth a little bit at a time, right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's the way to spin it.
So on tonight's episode, we're going to talk Puerto Rican wrestling.
Hell yeah.
So this episode of the project, as you see, it takes place from Ponce, Puerto Rico, Capital Sports Promotions in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was a institution in terms of the NWA. You had great superstars coming down from the United States. Well, technically, Puerto Rico is part of the United States. But coming down to the Caribbean, like Bruiser Brody, Dusty Rhodes, Randy Savage, Ric Flair, and so on and so forth. They kind of peddled their wares down in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico being my homeland, I guess. My mother emigrated from Puerto Rico when she was around 5 in the late 50s. She claims that her childhood was just like West Side Story. Which is ironic because my childhood was just like the Golden Girls. It was really like that TV show Small Wonders. You ever seen that show?
You were a robotic girl?
I wish I had a robotic girl. That'd be awesome.
Well, good luck. Actually, now you can have one.
But yeah, VR coming out soon. So the one thing I didn't like about that show was the brother. You ever see people and you just hate their face? He's probably a swell enough guy, nice enough dude, whatever. But as a kid, I fucking hated his face. It's just
I would say
bothered me.
I understand that. I'm thinking of characters like Chris's Story, Scott Fargus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Just looking, I was like, man, fuck you, man. I hate you.
We should probably take a second to mention, of course, our listeners. We have them.
I'm shocked.
Well, no, I like the fact that we have a core group in Australia.
Yeah.
We've got British fans.
Yeah.
And was it Thailand, you said?
It was Taiwan.
Taiwan. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, anger those Taiwan fans. Angry emails are coming in now. How dare you?
So we love our international fans.
Damn right.
So thank you. If you're listening to this and you're from another country, thank you, and keep on listening.
Yes, and comment. Emails and like and
subscribe. Yeah, absolutely. Hit that like button and make sure you subscribe.
Ding.
So the main event for this show in Puerto Rico will be Randy Savage versus Roddy Piper. The dream match that we never got.
Oh, wow.
Hey, Matt, how do you think Randy Savage and Roddy Piper would have worked in the ring together?
I think it would have been fantastic, but I think the out of ring really would have built it up.
Yeah.
I mean, you can only imagine how Piper would have really played off the Miss Elizabeth stuff, trying to seduce her or whatever, or mess with his head. Piper in his later years, did some controversial stuff, but he could play off of it, man. Really go that angle. And I think in the ring, Piper was pretty versatile, and Savage was Savage, so you can really make it work.
If you guys ever watch Roddy Piper's JCP stuff, he can go in the ring. And I think the one match that you'll, in WWF, and you're like, holy shit, is that one with Bret Hart. And you're like, oh, crap, this guy's not just a punch and kick guy.
Oh, the bloodbath match?
Yeah.
Is that the one where he bled without permission?
Yeah, so he had bladed during that match, and at that time, the WWF had a strict no blood policy. They were finding wrestlers who would be caught on camera blading. Interesting note, Ric Flair bladed on that show too, which was WrestleMania 8, and was fine because they caught it on camera. Plus, Ric Flair is not the most subtle blade job guy, so...
Wow. You got to think, compared to nowadays, where over the weekend Heath Slater got kicked in the face legit.
You saw that as a hard way, man.
Yeah, and he had 23 stitches in his head or something like that, or whatever. But it happens. I think in the business, if you want to talk about the sports aspect of it, stopping a match for blood loss is actually kind of a cool thing to do, because if you're going to let them keep going, fine, but stopping it gives you that real sense of feel. Like, let's see how. I remember a couple of years back, Randy Orton got like hard-weighed on the top of his head, which you'd never blade there unless you're Abdullah Butcher, which we'll talk about.
Yes.
And he was bleeding like a stuck pig, and then all of a sudden he was like, the doctors are working, I'm throwing Vaseline on his head, and it stopped for a bit.
They recently had something like that happen during a Samoa Joe Finn Balor match, and it almost ruined the match because they literally stopped the match every 30 seconds.
Who was getting bloodied?
It was
Balor?
Joe. No, it was Joe, and that was a hard way. And they just kept on, and you see Joe getting pissed, like, get the fuck out of here! I want to work my match. And it wasn't even like a whole lot of blood. But stopping a match for blood, it does work unless you're Lex Luger, when you have flare up in the torture rack and there's like a trickle of blood going down your head, and they call the match.
Can I tell you that was one of the main reasons I never ordered a pay-per-view from WCW again after that. I got that pay-per-view. My friends came over. We were all excited. We were like, Luger's up there. And it was Baltimore.
Yeah.
And then the sports, they're stopping the match. So, of course, after the bell rang, it was like, we won the belts.
Dusty.
Yeah, we talked about how they killed themselves with that stupid booking decisions.
Yeah. Unreal. So I think Savage and Piper, I think they would have had some classic matches. Again, the promos would have been off the charts. And it's funny because we never got to see a lot of those matches, especially in the WWF. They were kind of, kept separate for whatever reason. I know Piper was in and out for a very long time, but not to have at least one, major angle. And I think they missed out on a potential angle with Rick Rude and Randy Savage, because imagine Rick Rude trying to hit on Liz.
Oh.
And the matches do it, and the way that Rude bumps and shit, and he would have flew everywhere for Savage.
Oh, well.
So Puerto Rican wrestling. Now, you can't talk Puerto Rican wrestling without talking about the Puerto Rican promotion, which is the World Wrestling Council. It was founded in 1973 by Victor Jovica and Carlos Colon. I would consider them the WWF of Puerto Rico because they are still in business. They're still functioning to this day.
Wow.
Yeah. Even with all the controversies, and we'll get into that a little bit later, and some of the, they almost went bankrupt a couple of times, but so did Vince. So they were there, and one of the original owners of Capital Sports Promotions was Gorilla Monsoon.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So they always had a kind of a working type sort of relationship with the WWF. At one point, they were a developmental area for them, which is awesome because, the wrestling down there is so different than in the States. So Capital Sports Promotions was a member of the National Wrestling Alliance until 1988. And they are pro wrestling in Puerto Rico. Their television shows get ratings of 12s and 15s down there. So, again, those are local ratings, but it's insane.
That's still crazy, though. I mean, that's awesome.
Puerto Rico is not big by any stretch of the imagination. I'm pretty sure Long Island is big where I live. It's completely insane. So a lot of you may know who Carlos Colon is. He's a recent inductee to the WWE Hall of Fame. You also may know that his sons worked and works for the WWE currently. So you have Carlito Colon, or Carlito Caribbean Cool. He was in WWF for a while.
Caribbean Cool.
Yeah.
He was actually, honestly, he had a pretty good push.
Yeah, no. I mean, he's been criticized for being lazy and what have you, but what are you gonna do? And then Primo is also the son of Carlos Colon. Epico, his tag team partner, is Carlos Colon's nephew. There is a big WWF connection there.
Now, do you think they keep getting pushed because as a favor, or is it just they can't figure out a gimmick for them?
I think these guys are really talented. And I wish they would give them a legitimate push, but I think the reasons why they haven't been released yet, because they're, and this due to their lame gimmicks, is because Carlos Colon still promotes WWF shows in Puerto Rico to this day. So when WWF goes down to Puerto Rico, he, much like back in the 80s, they would have their local promoters. So the WWF would come into their towns, what have you, and the promoter would have everything set up for them. It would be an arena. They take care of all the publicity and all that kind of good stuff. So that's how they used to do it back in the day, and still in Puerto Rico, they still do that to this day. So Matt, what are your thoughts on the WWC or Capital Sports Promotions? What are your thoughts on their overall product?
Well, I will say my first exposure to them was Lords of the Ring. It was a VHS tape I had as a kid, and it was like the best of Starrcade. It was kind of like a Pro Wrestling Illustrated, best of wrestling.
Bill Apter was the host of that, right?
Bill Apter and Gordon Solie.
Nice.
And it was a great tape. It really, because it went around, but it had footage from various matches. It had footage from the Abdullah Butcher Carlos Colon match at Starrcade.
Yeah.
But what was funny was they like leave the match like as if they're gonna go back to it. Oh, there's some really fantastic action there. Like, it's not over, man. It's not over. And then the next thing I did is I want to say it was like a local like video store, and for whatever reason they had like all these tapes, like, you know, Sergeant Slaughter's best matches and like him and Kernodle against Youngbloods, right?
Yeah.
I have that tape. I have a tape with like, you know, Mid-South stuff with like Terry Taylor and Chris Adams versus Sheep Herders, you know. And then there was this tape, The Bloody, Bloody Matches of the Caribbean, Volume 1. It was phenomenal. Oh my God. Like, for a kid who was a hardcore wrestling fan, early teens, it's just bloodbath after bloodbath after bloodbath. And I know in our pre-show prep we were watching some of the footage of the matches. It just brings me back to a kid. Like, we would joke around that, like, anyone who had a birthday, we would mockingly pretend to smash him over the head with a framed photo. It just, you know, Abdullah the Butcher bleeding. And I always love is if you notice his blading style, he has a blade inside the tape of his left hand usually.
Yeah.
And what he does is he like rubs it over his head real quick.
Flair does it the same way.
Huh?
Flair does it the same way.
Oh, really?
Yep.
And it was a quick slash, and it would, you know, blood. Like when I was taught how to make a blade, you take like a razor and you cut off the edge. You wrap it up so you have one like part showing, and then you wrap your wrist up and you wrap it and put it under your tape, or you put it under your finger. And I was taught to do tape because that way, if you couldn't blade, it wouldn't like get caught. You wouldn't like grab the guy and cut him by accident, which was, you know, a considerate move to do. But he just like bladed like a motherfucker. Like, holy shit! He's like boom, 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 and all of a sudden just gusher fountain, you know, fountain works. And it was, as a kid, oh my God, like it was so bad. As a kid, we used to like, even before I got into wrestling older, I'd have like Star Wars figures, and the Rancor Keeper was my Abdullah the Butcher.
Nice.
Except if I ever found him, he has tons of razor cuts all over his head and red pen mark. Because, hey, you know, the fans want blood.
But red means green, brother.
You're damn right. And that's the thing, too, is like, you look at the fans, they loved it. They're blood-hungry, you know, bloodthirsty mob. You know, I think it's like the further south you go, the more legit they still believe wrestling is, as far as like actually not being a, you know, a storyline.
You know, especially in the 80s. I mean, they were pretty late on kind of breaking kayfabe for them.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's all wide open, but back in the day, no, they still believed. You know, my grandfather, and I never got the chance to meet him because he passed away when I was like 1 year old. Huge wrestling fan, and I wonder if he went down and watched some of the shows down there.
Maybe. You know, I think too is if I had a chance. I remember one time I went on a cruise and we were laid over in Puerto Rico because of the hurricane, and my first thought was, maybe we can catch a show, you know. And then years later, I went to Mexico, and I was in Playa del Carmen, and there was like an arena there, or like a sport venue.
Yeah.
And they had spray painted on the side of the venue, like Mystico versus I forget whoever else, but it was like all the matches like spray painted on the side of the building. It was kind of cool. Like it was like nice graffiti, but it was well done. I would really like to see more matches in the Caribbean. I like watching old matches, anyways, because the crowds are so much hotter. I mean, now, like, especially North, you know, American crowds, when it comes to, like, you know, this, in the U.S., they're programmed. They have their signs. They have their chants. You know, we've talked about our feelings for the smart fans, you know. But I really feel that, you know, there's, like, sort of a cool magic bond between the fans and the wrestlers. You know, they still participate. They feed off each other. And those fans, those Bloody Bloody Matches tapes, I mean, you have guys like Chicky Star, and the fans are ballistic. The gem of that tape, Bloody Bloody Match of the Caribbean Volume 1, and you can go online to watch this, is the Manny Fernandez Invader 3 match, where he goes to the top rope, and Manny drops a knee on him, and we actually looked into this to kind of look it up historically to figure out the truth behind it, because Invader 3 starts gushing blood out of his mouth, like he's vomiting blood. And it's one thing like to Muta mist blood and be like, oh, okay, whatever, he spit some blood. He's just, you know, all over the ring.
You know, it's
and Manny,
thick,
of course,
and it's red, and
yeah,
you know, it's not food coloring. It's not anything. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah, and Manny, being the professional he is, goes up to the top rope not once but 2 more times and drops knees on him before the good guys rush the ring and, you know, send him packing. That's
why I thought it wasn't a shoot, because he went for a second time and he was legitimately injured. I don't know if Manny would have went a second time. Maybe he would have. You know, in terms of being professional, I don't think he would have dropped the second one. And if it was a shoot, I don't think he was leaving Puerto Rico alive.
Right. We actually looked into that. You want to share what we found for one of our possible theories?
So from what I understand, the way they did this effect was Vader number 3 drank some pig's blood and a bottle of vodka. So he's already kind of woozy and already kind of like nauseous, during the match. Apparently he knows how to throw up on command. He's gonna puke.
Oh, draws.
So that's the way they worked. He dropped the first knee drop and then he started puking on command, and it was pig's blood and vodka, which is amazing, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, it looks. If that's what they did, and let's say they did, that's a commitment to a.
Agreed.
That's commitment to getting an angle over.
Unfortunately, the angle, from what I understand, it was Manny Fernandez getting revenge on Invader number 3 for the dirty deeds that Invader number 1 did.
Yes.
So we're going to go into that now. In 1988, a world-renowned wrestler from the United States, and he also worked in Japan quite a bit, Bruiser Brody, was doing a tour of Puerto Rico. He was engaged in a argument, so to speak. Again, the details are kind of fuzzy. So basically, from what I understand happened was Invader number 1, which is Jose Gonzalez, wanted to talk to Brody in the shower. Now, Invader was the booker at the time, so they're going to talk business, which is commonplace for bookers and a top star to go into the showers and talk business, like what's going on, how we're going to work the match, what's the angle here, that kind of stuff. And then if you're in the WWF, that's where Terry Garvin goes and takes care of his business.
I was going to say, I think more offices need meetings and showers.
Yeah. People in the locker room, guys like Tony Atlas, TNT, who is Savio Vega, heard a commotion, people screaming in the shower. And then Brody comes out and he's been stabbed. At that point, Victor Jovica and Invader get in a heated argument. Invader leaves. They tried everything they could, from what they say. They get an ambulance down there to take him to the hospital, but it took about 40 minutes for the ambulance to get to the arena. Now, a lot of people said, there was a lot of traffic because it was a sold-out show, and the ambulance couldn't get in on time. They had a hard time calling the police, so basically, Brody just laid there. Brody being 6'8", 320 pounds, the Puerto Rican EMTs couldn't lift him to get him out of the arena, so Tony Atlas had to do it. So Tony Atlas had picked him up, put him in the ambulance, went to the hospital with him. At that point, Invader number 1 had went home and changed his shirt and came back, and the card went on as per normal. Dutch Mantel, who was also there at the time, was out checking out the crowd like he normally does, seeing, trying to count the attendance, so you make sure he gets his payoff correct. Comes in and and sees Brody kind of laying there in a pool of blood, but he didn't see the incident itself. So Brody and Atlas went to the hospital. Dutch tells the hotel that any calls coming for Brody, please send them to my room instead. At that point, Brody's wife had called. He had told her that he was in the hospital. Looks like he was all right, but get down to Puerto Rico as soon as you can to come get him. Yeah. About 20 minutes later, he received a call that Brody had died in the hospital. He had to get 2 surgeries, and he bled out on the second surgery, and he basically just bled to death. Now, a lot of people say that if he was in a hospital in the United States, they probably would have saved his life. The doctor on scene, the AMT on scene, had told Dutch that he saw air bubbles coming up from the cut. So what that meant was that it had punctured one of his lungs. There's conspiracy theories out there that Brody was, set up by the mob, or he was set up by the promotion, or it was Invader getting revenge for a grudge he had since they were in the WWF, where Brody had a match with him and didn't sell for him and beat him up during the match. Now, Invader claims that it was self-defense, that Brody was coming after him. Now, Brody did have a reputation of being kind of hard to work with in terms of, promoters. He would walk out of shows. He would, hold people up for money, that kind of stuff. So we're not 100% sure there, what the argument was about. Yeah. So fast forward, Invader's arrested. They go to trial. Puerto Rican prosecutor's office. We're supposed to subpoena like Tony Atlas, Dutch Mantel, and whoever wrestlers were there. Yeah. Unfortunately, the subpoenas were sent late, and Dutch and Tony Atlas were not able to come back to testify. So Invader got off. So he's a free man to this day, and still currently working for WWC to this day. Yeah. And Bruiser Brody, one of the fantastic wrestlers and a legend, tragically passed away in 1988. Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think it was a setup? You think it was, let's teach Brody a lesson because he's hard to deal with, so I'm just going to stab him, not try to kill him, but try to stab him to kind of keep him in check? Because at this point, he's like making $40,000, a week. He's making like Hogan type money between Japan, United States, and Puerto Rico. So you think this is a way to keep him in check? Or you think it was the Puerto Rican mob, what have you, kind of putting a hit on him? Do you think it was a cover-up by, the Puerto Rican justice system, who were big fans of Carlos Colon and Invader? They're, two huge baby faces, so they can't, they can't believe that one of their own stars, would do something like this. You think it was prejudice because Brody was an American? A lot of people did say that if he was a Puerto Rican person who got stabbed, they would have took better care of him and made sure he didn't die. So what are your thoughts, Matt?
I think it's one of those things that I believe there's probably a little bit gray area. I just don't see why I don't think you'd want to kill a big draw like that because you're hurting yourself. But I could see it's probably something that just went wrong. Maybe he's trying to send a message, whatever. Regardless, he did kill him. I think he did kill him.
Yeah.
Brody didn't fall on a knife.
No, I mean that's been documented. It was, and it's hard to say this in today's climate, but a justifiable homicide.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense for the promotion to kind of be, trying to cover this up or, be the perpetrator of this crime because it hurt their business dramatically. Brody was a big draw for them, and a lot of wrestlers who were friends with Brody and wrestled in the United States didn't want to come to Puerto Rico anymore. Number one, because they feared for their safety, and number two was like, how can you do this to somebody?
Right.
So that almost put him out of business.
I think a lot of it had to do with, I always think that he didn't do it on purpose because, again, you're hurting your own business. If Atlas and Dutch Mantel could have, maybe they would have. Also could have been afraid of their safety for themselves.
Like, I'm not sure if Tony Atlas ever went back. I know Dutch had went back to Puerto Rico, worked for Carlos again. Eventually became a booker down there for them and the IWA. So, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
It's a tragic story, and it's a tragic end to, a great competitor that would have been, still going strong into the mid-'90s, I think.
Yeah.
And when the wrestling boom happened again, I think he would have been a big draw.
Oh, yeah. He's one of those guys you wonder how he would have done, because I could have seen him easily going into ECW and being like, like the mega hero,
Yeah, he would have killed Paul, though, because if Paul wouldn't have paid him, he would beat the shit out of him. Because he would slap promoters and not give a shit. Dude was 6'8", 320, and had no problem beating up a promoter.
Yeah.
Who owed him some money. So I don't know if Paul would have booked him because he would be like, I gotta make sure I pay this motherfucker.
Yeah.
So again, the matches down in Puerto Rico, they would be comparable to your hardcore matches of today. Lots of blood and guts. Very comparable to ECW. Now ECW being most notable for your hardcore wrestling. They did have their technical wrestling too. I'm not going to debate that, but what made them popular was the people, putting the tables on fire, putting people through tables, the barbed wire, the tape fist with glue and glass, type matches.
Yeah.
You had New Jack, staple gunning someone in the head, and the whole nine, the balcony dives, and a lot of that stuff they did down in Puerto Rico. Like, I watched a match the other day, and it was Carlos Colon, and he's in a fire match where literally the ropes are set on fire. Like, there's no two ways about it. They're on fire. And one of the biggest stars that wrestled in Puerto Rico was Abudullah the Butcher. So, Matt, what's your take on Abudullah the Butcher?
I think Abudullah the Butcher is making the most of what you get. Because you would watch him and say, well, he's just this giant fat dude. What's he going to do? But he was just this maniacal foreign object guy. I always remember there was a 4 video games in the D&D era. There was the Superstars of Wrestling game, and you had this sheet of paper with each wrestler had like a DC offensive card, defensive card. You'd roll dice to see what moves you did, and each wrestler had a finisher. So like Ric Flair was a figure 4 leg lock. San Martino was the bear hug. Abdullah the Butcher was foreign objects, and you'd roll a 6-sided die, and it'd be like, for let's say it was figure 4 leg lock, right? It would be how much damage. Well, for Abdullah the Butcher, it was like smash with camera, choke with wire, smash with fork. It was all like foreign object, break 2x4 overhead, and that was just part of the charm. Abdullah gave you a wild match, and you knew when Abdullah was going to be involved, it was going to be a crazy, wild, drag-out brawl, And, you know, he was enjoyable to watch. You know, it was like kind of a gimmicky thing, but it was enjoyable, you know. And I think with a lot of people, when you see, you know, big wrestlers or heavy wrestlers, there's just no real charm to him. He just had a charming way about him, I guess. It's hard to say, but he did.
You know, he was funny because he looked disgusting.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, he wasn't taking any juice, I can tell you that.
Right. He was not juicing.
But every once in a while he would do something that, number one, would make you laugh, or he would shoot a smile to the camera. And you're like,
Yes.
oh, I love you, Abby. There's this funny angle, and it's in WCW. There's a couple of them with Abudullah. I'll get into them individually. So there's this one where it's Van Hammer versus Cactus Jack in a Falls Count Anywhere match.
Mm-hmm.
Which sounds ridiculous because it is. So I guess the arena that they're at has like stables. I guess it's like a rodeo arena or whatever. You know, Cactus and Van Hammer, they're fighting. They end up in the back. They end up in the stables. And all of a sudden, it's a cowboy, and it hits Van Hammer with a shovel. And you turn around, and it's Abdullah in a cowboy hat, which is awesome. So I think Cactus gets the win or whatever. And then for no reason, he picks up Missy Hyatt and puts her like in a trough. So she gets a soaking wet. And he's just smiling, having like the time of his life. And I thought that was fantastic. Another one was the infamous Chamber of Horrors match. Good old WCW. So 1991, WCW had the Chamber of Horror match at their Halloween Havoc. And I believe, I'm going to go off the top of my head right here, it was Elegante Sting, the Steiner Brothers, versus Abdullah the Butcher, the Diamond Stud, also known as Scott Hall, Cactus Jack, and Big Van Vader. So the finish of that match is... The rules of this match, basically anything goes, or what have you. And the way you get the win is that you have to put your opponent in an electric chair, and you have to flip the switch. It sounds ridiculous because it is.
Yeah.
So the finish of that match is they put Rick Steiner in the chair. Rick reverse it, belly to bellies Abdullah into the chair, and then Cactus Jack flips the switch by accident, and the match is over. Abdullah is electrified and probably dead, but he's not. And the third one, and my favorite, was at one of the Battle Bowls, the Lethal Lottery.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, is the Lethal Lottery. Your name gets put in a hopper, and they pick teams at random. The winners of the team go into Battle Royal, and that's how they determine a winner. So, so it was Cactus and somebody versus a team. Abdullah is upset that he wasn't picked, and he beat up Cactus tag team partner, which is Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker, in the back. And he tries to go out there, and he's like, "No, Cactus, I want to be your partner." And the referees won't let him. And then Parker literally crawls on his belly to join the match just to end up getting beat anyway. So the part two of that, because it's a part two, so they pick teams, and it ends up being Sting and Abdullah. And so Sting comes down, and Abdullah comes out, and he's smiling. He's like, "Yeah, me and Sting, we're going to kick some ass." Like, he's like being a cheerleader for Sting. And then he turns on him, like within 30 seconds. He's like, "Me and you were a tag team. We're awesome." And then he like fucking hits him with his fucking kendo stick. And then I think their opponents were like Terry Taylor or Brian Pillman or something like that. I forget what it was. But I remember like the match, like it was like an inverted, like it was a mess. Because Abdullah kept on attacking Sting throughout the entire match. So that was awesome. So, what are some of your favorite Abdullah matches?
Oh, well, I did enjoy his time in WCW. I think I used to like him back when he was in like World Class.
Yeah, guys, he wrestled everywhere. So.
Yeah, he did. I liked watching his stuff in Japan a lot because he would have, like, he fought Hogan one time that's really on YouTube, you know, and he'd have like legit matches. You know, he's pretty revered over there.
He's a movie star over there.
Right. You know, and if you watch one of those goofy movies where he was like an action hero.
Yeah.
You're like, Abdul the Butcher's an action hero? Like, yes, he is.
Did commercials the whole night over there.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite wrestlers, Fatty the Butcher, after Abdullah. And I think really, when you look at today's world where every wrestler's like jacked and cut, that's why a guy like Kevin Owens stands out, you know, because they're not the same cookie cutter mold. You know, not to say Abdul Butcher, someone couldn't be like him now.
It would have to be the right guy because
right.
They would have, because he has charisma.
Yes.
He may not, you know, he doesn't talk, but he has charisma. you couldn't put like a, Viscera in that role and have it work.
No.
Or like a Mark Henry. You can't just pick a fat black guy to do that and kind of, have that work because they didn't, Abdullah had charisma. He had an awesome look, and he was the madman from Sudan, which is ridiculous because he's from like Canada, and he lives in Atlanta and he owns Abdullah the Butcher's House of Ribs and Chinese Food, which is fantastic. In my travels one day, I definitely want to go down there and check it out.
Yeah. That's on the list.
Yeah. But he had feuds with everyone, so would it be Brody? Would it be Hanson? Would it be Inoki, Hogan, Dusty? He's fought them all. He fought them all. Yeah. He is a WWF Hall of Famer as well.
And he was a great hired gun type bad guy,
Yeah, you had your heel manager who needed a guy to come in and beat up Jerry Lawler. I'm calling Abdullah.
Right, poor Jerry Lawler.
Yeah, the first family all the way. I think that was it when, speaking of Memphis, I think that was probably creatively their best era. Was like, whenever Jerry Lawler turned babyface, because his manager was Jimmy Hart, and then the whole story, Jerry got hurt, whatever, and then Jimmy cut a promo saying, you know what you do when a horse breaks you, like you go outside and shoot it. And then Lawler's broken his leg, and then Lawler comes back and beats up Hart, and then Hart vows revenge, and he brings in various guys. It would be Terry Funk, Kevin Sullivan, a whole litany of guys to come in and try to take out Lawler. And I think for me, that's my favorite time period, definitely in Memphis. So again, down in Puerto Rico, I mean, they first shoot, they think this stuff is back in the day, they thought this shit was legitimate, and they would have riots and they would throw shit in the ring, and it was like, for some of the heels, a very hostile work environment, especially for a guy like Terry Funk, who was not afraid to cut offensive promos against the Puerto Rican people, just being a heel, not being overly controversial, but being, he called the Puerto Rican people a bunch of pigs, and that Puerto Rico was a giant pig farm, and it was full of shits.
Yeah, good old Terry.
And I don't know how he made out of Puerto Rico alive. But even their wrestlers, even look back in the day, like they weren't like bodybuilders, they weren't gassed up freaks. Yes, the Warlord did work down there at one point, but for the most part, they weren't gassed up freaks. But they look like legitimate tough guys, and I think they were all. If you want to be a wrestler in Puerto Rico, you have to be a legitimate tough guy.
Right.
Now, the WWC had a rival promotion, much like the WWF, WCW. They had the IWA, which is the International Wrestling Association, which was ran and owned by Miguel Perez and Savio Vega. And much like in the 90s, the mid-2000s, where you had people jumping from one company to another, and a bitter territory war for an island that's very, very small.
Right.
So these guys would bump into each other all the time. It wasn't like, you have your WWF, based out of New York, and you have your NWA based out of Charlotte or St. Louis or wherever you want to call it. Puerto Rico is very, very small in comparison, so it was something that they did big business until the IWA went out of business in 2012. So, Matt, what are some of your favorite Puerto Rican wrestlers?
Well, of course, Abdullah. I liked Carlos Colon because to me he was just such a mo. I mean, it's just he was always kind of like this, all right, he's gonna go to battle, and you get all excited and be like, oh, yeah. But
now, guys, I'm gonna preface this by saying Carlos Colon was Puerto Rico's Hulk Hogan, or Puerto Rico's John Cena. He was the guy, the top guy. Everyone loved him, top babyface, the whole nine.
Yeah, I liked him as far as his battles. I don't watch enough anymore, obviously now, but I think back then I was like, Cologne, Abdullah were my two favorites, so when they feuded, it was fun. I liked the commitment by the wrestlers, to the part.
I mean, you have such, favorites as Chicky Star. He's a big deal down there. He's still he's semi-retired now, still wrestles every once in a while, like a la Terry Funk.
Right.
You had guys like Hercules Ayala, who was huge. You had Al Perez, Steve Strong, Manny Fernandez. And I know one of your favorites, Rufus R. Jones.
Oh, yeah, Rufus R. Jones.
Again, he doesn't get a lot of credit, and he doesn't get a lot of love. A lot of people don't talk about him. But he is fantastic. Now, I'll make the point, and I'll say, this is being a little controversial, but if you like Dusty Rhodes, you like Rufus R. Jones. I'm just saying that now.
Why would that be?
Now, there's some rumors, allegedly, that basically all of Dusty's shtick came from Rufus R. Jones. Now, I'm not going to say that it is true. I'm not saying it's not true. It's just, that has been reported. There's not a whole lot of Rufus R. Jones in his prime on tape anyway for me to make that distinction. But from people who were there, they definitely know. I have a trivia question for everyone. Which well-known wrestling manager is the son of Rufus R. Jones?
Manager?
Wrestling manager who's the son of Rufus R. Jones.
Paulie Dangerously. No?
Very close.
I would guess this Dr. Styles.
You are correct. The Dr. Styles Slick is the son of Rufus R. Jones. There's irony there where Slick is managing Akeem, who is a parody of Dusty. Dusty grabbing his stuff from Rufus R. Jones. Yeah. Like, that's some meta booking there. You know what I mean? So a lot of people did not know that Slick's father was a professional wrestler, and he was Rufus R. Jones. Again, a big draw in Puerto Rico, and a very big draw in the National Wrestling Alliance, and also the AWA in the 70s and 80s as well. For those of you who don't know who Rufus R. Jones is, please look him up because he is awesome. Again, you had the famous tag team, the Invaders, which was 1 and 2, and then they brought in a third one, but no one knows who the third Invader is. So, guys, if you know who Invader number 3 is, please let me know, because I can't find it anywhere. I looked. I cannot find out who Invader number 3 was. Because I want to congratulate that man for drinking vodka and pig's blood to get an angle over.
Right.
The current WWC Universal Heavyweight Champion is Carlito Clone.
Really?
Big surprise.
I mean, the dad's kid is the champ, huh?
Yeah. You also have some other wrestlers down there. You have Apollo, Joe Bravo, Miguel Perez, Mr. 450, Ray Gonzalez. You have Thunder and Lightning, Mike Mendoza, and Chicano, who is fantastic. And then you have Apollo Jr., Angel Cotto, Peter the Bad Romance, Tommy Diablo. And then they have some girl wrestlers down there. You have Amazonia, Black Rose, Havana. I think I've heard of Black Rose before. Roxy, Vanilla Vargas, who's a valet down there as well. So
Vanilla Vargas, huh?
Yeah. No, I can't get any information. I'm not sure what their biggest show of the year is, like their WrestleMania. It might be their anniversary show, which is in September. Mm-hmm. It could be their Night of Champions, which is in August. It could be their Summer Madness, which is in June. Or it can be your Moment of Truth in February. So I'm not 100% sure. So the current champions, like I was mentioning before, you have their Universal Heavyweight Champion, which is Carlito. You have their Puerto Rican champion, which I guess is like a United States champion. Chicano. You have the tag team champions, which is La Revolution, or the Revolution. And their junior heavyweight champion is Tommy Diablo.
Tommy Diablo.
Yeah. And the way that the WWC made their money, boxing was very huge in Puerto Rico. But boxing basically only took place in Ponce, which is one of their big cities down there. So a lot of people in your small towns didn't get a lot of sports. What WWC did was they went to all the small towns to kind of get a following, grassroots, instead of just trying to just focus out of their main city. Again, a pretty innovative way of doing business, especially back in the day. Because back in the day, if you didn't have big towns, you didn't have anything. So one of their big shows of the 80s was A Hot Night in Bayamon, which it was September 10th, 1988. The commentators for the show was Hugo Savinovich. So you guys might know him from the WWF. He does a lot of their Spanish commentary. And Brad Batten and Burt Batten. So, Matt, what are your memories of the Batten brothers?
They used to show up, they used to be a magazine called Wrestling World Magazine. And they used to have, little segments, articles, from the Puerto Rican territory, whatever. And they would have, the Batten brothers. It'd be huge stars. And now, when you see them, you're like, oh.
Who the hell?
It's kind of like in porn. They're twins who do porn, but they're ugly twins, but they're twins. All right.
Also on that show, you had Jimmy Valiant, the Boogie Woogie Man himself, and Rufus R. Jones versus the Wild Samoans. And this is way past the Wild Samoans' prime here. This is 1988 we're talking about, guys. So
yeah, that's 10 years past.
So they're really on their last legs here.
But hey, Rufus R. Jones brings it.
Yeah, agreed. And you had Mr. Pogo. You guys know who Mr. Pogo is? Because Mr. Pogo is crazy.
Pogo?
Mr. Pogo.
Come on a pogo stick?
He's a Japanese wrestler. Mr. Pogo is a Japanese wrestler whose specialty is like hardcore matches. So, he was definitely, if you ever watch FMW, which is the Japanese version of ECW, or if you want to speak correctly, ECW was the American FMW, just less ridiculous.
Okay.
So FMW would have like piranha, electric chair, electrified ring while the ring was on fire in the middle of a pool match. So Mr. Pogo was involved in those. So, lots of blood, barbed wire, Japanese Abdullah Butcher, for the most part.
Jeez.
So he is fantastic. So guys, if you don't know who Mr. Pogo is, please look him up. Watch a video on the YouTube. And then you had good old Ricky Santana.
Oh, no.
No relation to Tito, by the way, guys. No relation to Tito. I don't think Tito wrestled much in Puerto Rico. I really never heard. Like, he wrestled every once in a while in Mexico, but he was American. Never really saw him down in Puerto Rico.
Mr. Pogo.
Bless his heart. Sheep Herder spent a lot of time down there. I know they're one of your favorites, Matt.
Oh, those. And I'd say this before they became the Bushwhackers.
Sheep Herders.
Yeah, they were like Abdullah Butcher. They were scary to think about fighting.
Yeah. I believe Nelson Royal was the original Sheep Herder. So I think it was Luke Williams and Nelson Royal, and then Butch came in later.
Nelson Royal?
I think so. Because I remember I saw them on the match in Memphis. I'm like, wait a minute. Something is not right here. I was like, oh, it's a different dude. Sheep Herders, for you guys who don't know, are the Bushwhackers. So what do you think the difference between a sheep herder and a bushwhacker is?
PG versus R rating.
Were sheep herders known as being like maniacs?
Apparently.
No, my mistake. It was Jonathan Boyd and Luke Williams. Where did I get Nelson Royal from? I don't know. I'm weird. But yeah, so are sheep herders known around the world as being like bloodthirsty psychos?
Well, I hope so. My youth has been ruined if it's not true.
That's weird. I gotta find that out. Guys, if you know a sheep herder, let me know if they're crazy. I did enjoy them in the WWF as the Bushwhackers. It's my dad's favorite tag team.
Really?
Yeah.
I will say I have a friend who got drunk one night in Boston, and he walked from the train station to his house doing the Bushwhacker walk the whole way.
Now, guys, have you ever watched WrestleMania 5? There's a match where it's the Bushwhackers versus the Rougeau brothers. And in this match, there's a famous spot. I believe it was Raymond got one of the Bushwhackers up for a slam. And the Bushwhacker grabs their junk and gives it a nice little tug.
Really?
Yeah. It's really weird and a little bit uncomfortable. So, guys, watch that match again. You'll see he gives a good old tug down there. They go on with the match. And then they proceed to lick Sean Mooney, which was, again, off-putting. Because they're trying for his mouth. And they missed.
Oh.
So I was like, why are you trying to lick him in the mouth? It's weird. But the Bushwhackers, they spent a good time in Puerto Rico. And I believe Luke still lives down there. He moved down to Puerto Rico.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so...
Which WrestleMania was it? WrestleMania 5?
It was 5.
Oh, yeah. Well, just so you know, if you look up Bushwhackers vs. Rougeau Brothers, there's like one of the first of the... Ah!
You see that?
Oh, he gives him the tug. He gives him the tug. Oh, for the love of gorilla. Why?
The commentators don't even fucking mention it. I would have.
Well, what are you going to say? He gets him up. Good little quick tug job. There's the tug job for you, folks.
So, guys, I will leave a link in the description to see the Bushwhacker finishing hold, the tug job.
As opposed to the Rougeau brothers flying groinbuster.
Yeah. Maybe that was a defense.
It might. Maybe he was trying to like adjust the object and be like, oh, he's helping him out.
At least we know for sure that Raymond is packing some heat.
That's right. Good guys. Good.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Oh, man.
According to Honky Tonk Man, The Bushwhacker Loop sends him porn via the email. All the time. And like crazy Japanese porn.
Well, what other kind is there?
Yeah. I got another big star for them down in Puerto Rico is Ricky Banderas. Never heard of Ricky Banderas?
I have not.
He wrestled in TNA as Judas Messias, like in 2007 for a while. And he wrestles in one of your favorites, Lucha Underground, as Mil Muertes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's
nice.
That's Ricky Banderas, big star in Puerto Rico.
Good for him.
And guys, do not call a Puerto Rican Mexican, and don't call a Mexican Puerto Rican. They get real upset about that. So
no, we talked about that the other day about the Chinese Koreans and the
like do not call a Japanese person Korean. They get real upset. So don't do that. And it's funny because a lot of times when Puerto Ricos go down to Mexico, they're heels.
Really?
Yeah, because they won't cheer for them. So a lot of times when they go down there, they're either under a mask and they don't know who they are, or like if they come down as Puerto Ricans, they're heels. So there you go. Because Vince liked to call Mexicans Puerto Ricans and Puerto Ricans Mexicans all the time. Because he didn't know the difference.
Well, that's like when he had that gimmick with the Shining Stars now, and they were the Matadors.
Yeah.
It's like, close enough. Yeah, just picture Vince. I want Matadors. We don't have any Mexican wrestlers to do that besides Alberto Del Rio. Just put a mask on those other two guys. Sir, they're Puerto Rican. Whatever.
Same difference.
Build a wall. Build a wall.
I know you mentioned Alberto Del Rio. I don't know if a lot of people know his lineage. So do you know who his father is?
Was his father Dos Caras?
That's correct. Do you know who his uncle is?
Is his uncle... I used to know this...
one of the three biggest stars in Mexico all time.
Mil Mascaras?
Mil Mascaras, yes.
Hey.
The guy who refused to sell for Andre the Giant.
Really?
Yeah. Apparently, Mil Mascaras is notorious for not selling anything. So he's like a road warrior, but in the mask.
Well, to be fair, if you watch a lot of lucha wrestling, there's not a lot of selling going on, anyways.
But like people will try to punch him, and he won't. He'll what? He'll just stand there, Undertaker style, and not give a shit. But Mil Mascaras being very important in the history of professional wrestling, and when we do our Mexican show, our 50th anniversary show, we'll talk about Mexican wrestling in detail because there's a lot of ground to cover on there. So one of the owners of WWC Capital Sports Promotion was Victor Quiones. Do you know anything about this guy? Because he's an interesting cat.
Victor, why does that ring a bell?
He also promoted the IWA in Japan that had that King of the Deathmatch tournament. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. So he did IWA Japan. He was also a promoter for Wing with the star in the middle, which is weird. But again, he's well renowned for being someone who was a really great booker, and he was very wealthy and took care of his wrestlers. He did a lot of things in the WWF where he was like a liaison. So he's the one that brought Taka Michinoku to the WWF. So he was super, super important. So he's really, really important in Japan. Like Tajiri was really close with him. Taka, Kentaro, we're all super super into this dude. So he was also the manager of the Headhunters. Remember that tag team?
Yes.
Basically, two Abdullah the Butchers.
Yeah.
There are two Abdullah Butchers, and they can do moonsaults.
Yeah, really, there's not a lot of cultural Kamala types anymore.
You need some. We need some.
Yeah,
I'm not saying the gimmick. I mean just kind of look.
Well, you have the Wyatt family, who I guess are
He had that new team with Paul Ellering, the Authors of Pain.
I don't remember them.
They're brand new.
Oh.
Yeah, so you have to get the network, dude, and get that NXT, bro.
I know. Dropping the ball.
And guys, I know a lot of you guys, when you guys looking international wrestling, there's a big barrier of entry for international wrestling because the commentary is either in Japanese or Spanish, and if you don't know Japanese or Spanish, you have a hard time kind of following what's going on in the matches. The good thing about Puerto Rican wrestling is that most of it's in English. Puerto Rico being a territory, Commonwealth of the United States,
Yeah.
So a lot of their commentary is in English, or they're bilingual. So it's good stuff. And a lot of most Puerto Ricans, I think, in Puerto Rico currently do speak English anyway. So, there you go. So. So any final words about Capital Sports Promotion, IWA, WWC, Puerto Rican wrestling in general, and what kind of fans would enjoy this kind of product?
Oh, I think ECW fans would.
Big time.
Probably NXT fans.
Yep.
For the connection with the audience. My one final word: don't have meetings in the shower.
No.
I'd push that off. Yeah, I'd be like, let's just meet in a closet and be fine.
So if your boss says, "Hey Matt, I want to talk to you in the shower," say no.
Oh, look at the time. I gotta go.
Or bring someone else there with you, and
right,
go from there.
Yeah. Bring Tony Atlas with you.
You need Tony Atlas having your back. He's someone I miss. I thought Tony Atlas was fantastic, by the way.
I used to see him at shows up here a lot, actually, when I was first starting in wrestling. Yeah, he was a lot of shows. Back then, before he got some problems, so he wasn't quite as bad back then, but he was a cool dude to talk to.
I mean, he's back, now. He's okay. He did a couple, he had recently had a couple different runs in the WWE, doing some backstage stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was doing some skits. He's, randomly backstage. But, I like Tony Atlas and his partner.
I always like the name. That's Atlas.
It is, and he was fucking jacked, bro.
Oh my god!
I mean, he pressed slammed Hogan, and this is not small Hogan. This is as big as Hogan got big. He was legitimately 6'8", 320 pounds. Got him over his head and fucking press slammed him like it was nothing.
Yep, he was legit. You
think they could have made him the NWA champion, or you think his inability to cut a promo really kind of hurt him? Or I think he wouldn't draw nationally as, the first black wrestler in 1983 to win the title.
Yeah, I think the problem with that is that he wasn't a good talker. I mean, he was okay, but unless you had him healing it up and he had a mouthpiece manager and kept his, conversation limited.
Well, he did he teamed up with JYD a lot, and he had Watts actually speaking for him. Watts would do that too in Mid-South. Since he was the babyface promoter, and guys, if you want to be a babyface authority figure, watch Bill Watts. He is actually the prototype perfect face, commissioner, president, what have you. Watch Bill Watts because he's amazing. But he would do a lot of talking for the babyfaces and put them in situations where they didn't have to talk because he's doing the talking for them. So he'd setting up a match, say Cornette hit Junkyard Dog, and he would set up the match and cut the promo that way. I don't know. I think he would have made a good NWA champion, even for a small time. They had those short reigns your Ronnie Garvin, and Carlos Colon, and what have you and Kerry Von Erich. So those guys had short runs, but they could have done some business with maybe a Tony Atlas as your first black heavyweight champion. Definitely JYD.
Oh yeah, JYD, man.
That kind of stuff.
He was awesome.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I mean, I know he had a drug problem or whatever, but people loved him, man. He fucking, they would have matches, guys. Mid-South would have matches at the Superdome. So just wrap that around your head. So they would have matches at the Superdome. So, you want to make sure that you understand that it wasn't only Vince that was drawing stadium shows. The other promotions were doing it too. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we often look back. I think Vince was the only one doing big shows, but it wasn't the case. I mean, there was a lot of guys having success, and I think especially in the South, the fans had, I mean, we're looking back in the 70s and 80s, there wasn't as much to do, obviously. But you could go to a show, have a Parade of Champions super show.
Guys, keep this in mind. They used to go to these towns every week. So every Friday night, you would see, you go to a World Class Championship Wrestling. And people would do that week after week after week. They would buy tickets in advance, sit in the same seats, the whole nine. And they would go to these towns every week. Florida was like that. Jim Crockett Promotions were like that. The WWF never did that. So they had a different model, much like the AWA model. They had a very similar model. Well, they would hit their big cities once a month. So you would go to the Garden once a month. You would go to Madison Square Garden. They would go to the Boston Garden. They would go to the Forum in Los Angeles. They would hit all these big arenas once a month. And then they would do their TV out of Allentown or White Plains, New York. So, again, it's a completely different animal there.
Yeah. I just think that, to get back to the Puerto Rican thing, I think it shows that with the right market, you can make money anywhere, really.
Agreed.
You don't need to have the steroid crazy man. You don't need to have the super flip guys. You can have a classic hero villain show and go with it.
You think your wrestlers are too good looking nowadays? I want to see some ugly dudes.
Oh, I do. I think like right now, what's his name? Baron Corbin.
Yeah.
He reminds me of a guy like if I was gonna wrap his gimmick, I'd give him Steve the Hitman Chambers. Go in, don't focus on, like this high level feud. Like build up, work your way up to a Dolph Ziggler instead of starting with him. And because right now it's like, okay, you get this feud going down. What happens next? And right. I think packaged properly. Again, I think if you bring in someone who goes, I got hired to take somebody out, you have a few questions. Who's he taking out? What's he gonna do? And who hired him? Right now, it's just this random dude showing up going, I'm a lone wolf.
You think it'd be to the WWF's benefit to establish and maybe work with the WWC to bring back a developmental territory in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, I almost say you could use it as a threat. You better behave right, or we're going to send you to Puerto Rico. Yeah. And the guys would be like, no, for God's sake, no, don't send me there.
Like, do you know who's a big star in Puerto Rico that came from there to go to WWF? Val Venus.
Really?
Yeah. Same thing with Scott Hall. He spent a lot of time down in Puerto Rico. This is pre-Razor, by the way.
Really? Okay.
So a lot of guys they're going around, they go into territory to territory, and Puerto Rico is a stop on their tour. That's how you got your training, and some of the best workers of all time came out of there. So it's like, oh, okay. So the one thing the WWE have to be careful of is that when you have this training facility and you have the same 5 teachers teaching all you guys how to work, that they're all going to come out of the school working exactly the same way. And we need guys like an Ox Baker and a Stan Hansen or Terry Funk to work, different styles so these guys can, I don't want a roster full of Dolph Zigglers. I love Dolph Ziggler to death, but I don't need a roster full of them because who's going to watch that? I want to see guys doing different things. I want to see your brawlers, like, good brawlers. I want to see my technical guys, my high-flying guys, let's be different.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I'm concerned about when you have a training facility like that and these guys are not going around and kind of learning the trade all over the world. Now, to their credit, they're bringing guys in with that international experience, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering to see how the guys fare that literally their first lockup took place at the Performance Center. Like the guys coming straight out of football, or the guys that right from Olympic wrestling, or even like MMA guys who didn't make it all the way or what have you. Powerlifters. I want to see how their styles are they going to exactly be the same, or they're going to fit their style with their character. We'll see. Because it's like the power plant.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the example is Johnny B. Bad. They trained Johnny B. Bad to be Johnny B. Bad. So when he had to change his gimmick, he couldn't because he only knew how to wrestle as Johnny B. Bad.
Right.
So that's all his promos from like day one. It was cut a promo like Little Red Shirt. You're gonna wrestle like this. You're gonna do these moves. That's all we're gonna teach you. And when these guys get lost or a spot doesn't go right, they go right back to the same spot again because they have to expand their repertoire. So guys, in closing, please make sure to check out Puerto Rican Wrestling, which is the WWC, the World Wrestling Council. You can also check out the IWA, International Wrestling Association. That was also in Puerto Rico until 2012. Check out some of the bloodiest matches from the Caribbean. I definitely recommend watching that. Guys, if you're listening to the show, then I figured that you already have a broad spectrum of wrestling, but we want to broaden your horizons. One of the things that I prided myself on is, I watch every single promotion. I try to find tapes from like Central States. I try to find like Mexican wrestling that I haven't seen before. I'm always looking for something that I haven't seen because I've, to my credit, I guess, I've seen just about everything.
Yeah.
So now for me, it's going back and searching for stuff that I've missed, that I've forgotten, or I've never seen. So, if there's matches in San Francisco that I've never seen before, that there's footage of it, I want to check it out because I want to see what it is and how it influenced what we see today and that kind of stuff. So, guys, we have the technology now. There's YouTube. You can look it up on Google. Kind of look up the different styles of professional wrestling because there's more than just the WWE. And you have so many independent promotions right now floating around. Some of them are fantastic. Some of them need some help. But I say this, support your local indie wrestling, because you never know. The guy you can be watching in the ring could be a big star one day. Like for me, back in the day, I got this tape from RF Video. I didn't know really what it was, but it was like on sale, and I pop it in. And I see this weird-looking dude with blonde hair and basketball shorts wrestling. And then I realized, like 3 years later, oh shit, that's CM Punk. You know what I mean? So I was literally watching his like earliest stuff, and this is like 2002, and this is like pre-Ring of Honor days. So guys, go out there, you can see the next big star. Yeah. You know, I saw a Daniel Bryan. I got tapes of Shawn Michaels TWA, and I saw Daniel Bryan wrestle underneath a mask, and he was the American Dragon.
Yeah.
And to see him progress, and that's how you really get behind guys, because you see them from their inception. Like I've literally seen Daniel Bryan from the start of his career to the end of his career. And I think you gotta do yourself, you know, if you want to be a wrestling fan, and if you want to do this, brother, you know, you go all the way. Look, search. I'm not saying to be obsessed, but ask questions. Go to some of these message boards. You know, listen to the show, and you can expand your horizons, and you can see some really cool stuff. So, guys, our next big show will be live from Dallas, Texas, at Texas Stadium. It'll be Parade of Champions 1983. This will be our first big show. And when I mean big show, big show. And it will be featured in the main event, Ric Flair versus Harley Race, for the NWA Heavyweight Championship in a steel cage.
Bum, bum, bum.
Now, I'm thinking to myself, because I'm struggling with this. So, Matt, I want to pose a question to you right quick.
Uh-oh.
What would you put on last? Kevin and David Von Erich with Chris Adams versus the Freebirds, or the NWA Championship match? What goes on last?
Who's challenging who for the title?
So it's Flair and Race in a steel cage.
And it's in Texas?
In Texas and Dallas at Texas Stadium.
As much as I love the world title, I'd put it on second to last.
I've been struggling with that myself.
Because you might have fans who say, well, I don't care about Flair or Race, but I love the Freebirds and Von Erichs. And that's your hometown feud. The other ones are guests. Yeah. You know. In
addition, we have Kerry Von Erich versus Jimmy Garvin on that show as well. We have a Randy Savage versus Andre the Giant match. And we also have, this is a big one, folks, Dusty Rhodes, Dick Murdoch, and Bruiser Brody versus Terry Funk, Dory Funk, and Stan Hansen. Main event anywhere in the world, folks. So we'll get into that more in our next show. Again, that's 2 shows from now. We do have another compilation episode of the best matches from the entire NWA coming up next, and then we have the Texas